I'd just like to thank you three for coming today. This podcast follows on from a series of podcasts that we've done with the partners, introducing the partners and looking at their journey and their experience of being in the law. But it's great that we've got our junior lawyers here today who are our future. But I'd like to give a big thank you to Tom, who probably wants to kill me right at this moment in time, because this was Tom's idea to do podcasts. And I have to admit, I didn't even know what a podcast was until Tom explained it to me. And so on the back of Tom's idea, we've done a series of podcasts with the partners. And now we're going to do them with you. So if we go round and just each introduce yourselves and tell a bit about how you've got to this point in your career.
Yeah, so my name's David. I'm originally from Peterborough. I moved to study law at the University of Liverpool in 2013. Graduated in 2016. Decided I wanted to stay in Liverpool. Love the city very much. So started working with MSB in September 2016. Then I started a training contract 2 years later and then qualified as a solicitor in November of last year.
That's great. So you're a newly qualified lawyer.
Yes, very much so. So newly qualified in the civil and commercial litigation team.
Great. And you, Tom?
My name's Tom O'Reilly. I'm originally from Birmingham. And very much like David, I moved to Liverpool to study and then just fell in love with the city. I joined MSB in 2019, I think it was now, as a family paralegal. And that's what I still am currently. But I'm set to start my training contract next year, which I'm very much looking forward to. I'm really enjoying it.
Great. And Jess?
Yes, so I did my English language and law degree in 2015 and had a really long-winded legal path because I didn't realise that doesn't mean you've got a full law degree. So then I had to go and do a master's in law for a year. And then I'm just finishing my second year of the LPC. So 6 years later, and I'm nearly done. And I'm excited about the next 6 years to see where that takes me. And obviously, I'm MSPA at MSB. I'm still an MSB newbie, but I'm going to stick around.
That's great. And maybe if you could all tell me a little bit about what made you want to be lawyers, what made you want to go into to the law.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in terms of wanting to study law at uni, it was more a case of, I'd done my A-levels, I'd done A-levels in English and history. So it was like, initially I was thinking, do I want to do history? Sort of, not really sure. And then sort of taking advice from people during sixth form, they were like, why don't you give law a go? Even if you don't want to be a lawyer, it's a very employable degree. It's a very good degree to do. So even after coming out of studying law, I still wasn't really sure because I'd done a bit of experience in the bar, done a bit of experience at solicitors' firms. So wasn't too sure. But the thing that I wanted to do is that I wanted something that was going to sort of challenge me, and I quite like solving problems. I quite like, sort of like having to find a solution for a particular issue. So that was what kind of like drew me into more working for solicitors rather than the bar, because I was like, I'm going to have time more rather than being handed a case the day before. And just kind of like, in particular with litigation now, it's the wide remit of different areas that we do. I quite enjoy, because every case is different. I have to think about things in a different way, handle clients in a different way as well. So yeah, in particular, the sort of the problem solving aspect of the job is what I enjoy.
Right. And when you started out, was it litigation that you wanted to do?
To be honest, it was more a case of, I want to get a job in a good law.
You want a job.
just like every graduate, you want to get a job in a law firm to get your CV rolling and get the experience going. So I worked in property originally in plot sales, so acting for developers in the Liverpool and Manchester areas. But I sort of realised probably after about a year that I was like, property's not quite for me. Like I didn't mind it, but I think it was more, I just wanted something a bit different. Do you know what I mean? Something that was a bit sort of more wide-reaching than property.
You're more like litigious, so you wanted to fight.
Yeah, exactly. It's more. I mean, like I've always played sports, so I quite like the competitive element of litigation. I like being able to win.
Right,
it's quite
fun.
Well, like you, David, I just always admired the work solicitors do. It just seemed like invaluable work, something like a vocation. So, I've always really admired legal professionals. And for me, I did a history degree, and it was always the history of law that interested me. So like legislation and how that's applied. So doing history, I didn't really want to become a history teacher. But I really was interested in how the law was applied. So I looked at, jobs within the legal sector, initially perhaps starting off as a legal assistant. And then I just fell in love with the job working at MSB and wanted to progress. So like you, Jess, I went back and then did the LPC. And just the attitude the firm's got to giving back to those that are in need, just something that really interested me. And,
Yeah, and I think family's very, very different. I mean, I'm quite competitive. I was a family lawyer and I always wanted to win. But in family, you're not meant to win or lose. There are no winners or losers. You're meant to be a lot more amicable. So it's kind of a completely different way of dealing with cases. Well, it's meant to be. You're meant to be a lot more amicable and a lot more negotiation, mediation,
sympathetic. And
yeah, exactly. I mean, history was always my favourite subject at school. So it's funny to hear that lots of people have got that history background who then go in to be lawyers. And how about you, Jess? What made you?
Yeah. So whenever I've been asked this question, I've always said, I've got a passion for justice and equality. And that is true. I do. That is true. But really, I was 12 or 13 and I was thinking about what career I wanted to do, and I wanted to do something that was like really going to make my mum and dad proud. And I was like, law or medicine, which one? It's got to be one or the other. But then I hate blood, I hate needles, really bad at science. So I was like, I'm obviously not going to be a doctor. So I was like, I'm going to be a judge. That's what I'm going to do. My mum and dad, they would call me Judge Jessie. They still call me that now. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to have a well-paid job. So even though that's probably not, having a passion for justice and equality isn't really what drove me to do it, but it's what would make me a good lawyer. Shall we say that?
Yeah, well, that's a really good answer. Yeah, I did a talk to a group of 10-year-olds, a whole classroom full of 10-year-olds. And at the time I had a convertible car and I was talking to them about justice and getting involved in the legal profession. And all they wanted to know was, how much is your car? Can we have a car like that if we're a lawyer?
Yeah,
social justice pays well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, is there anything that a lawyer, a case, anything that's particularly inspired you or kind of resonates with you? It can be a fictional lawyer, it can be a real lawyer.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose you've kind of got the obvious answers in terms of fictional ones, sort of, like Atticus Finch from To Kill a Mockingbird and the like. But I think going sort of similar to what Tom was saying in terms of studying history, like during history A level, I studied like the civil rights movement in America. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of landmark legal cases that were obviously built up to eventually the Civil Rights Act in '64. Mm-hmm. Things like Brown against the Board of Education. Things like that. So it was more a case of like how lawyers can influence changes in history, I think was what sort of like is something that not necessarily resonates with me, but it's something that I'm appreciative of, I think.
And there are those points, aren't there? And,
exactly,
and a lot was saying that yesterday, the case George Floyd, that is a point in history that people have been waiting for so many years. And yesterday was like living history. We'll look back on that day and think.
Yeah, and I'm not a criminal lawyer. Obviously, I did sort of criminal law at uni, but I've not looked at it since particularly. But I can appreciate the job that those prosecutors have done in that case, because it is absolutely massive, and we've seen that over the last year or so. So yeah, it's more a case of just the influence that lawyers, litigators, prosecutors, defenders, etc., can all have on sort of turning points in history, so to speak.
Great.
Yeah. So I'd say, as I mentioned, legislation for me, like getting to know the Equality Act and the Bribery Act. I did my dissertation on the Bribery Act.
Okay.
And then most recently the Family and Children Act, and getting to see how they're applied and how they've changed and how they've incorporated old legislation. And that's what's really interested me. And then, I mean, I listen to a lot of podcasts. So, surprise. And I mean, there's one I listened to about Lady Hale, and just her career, is really inspiring, and how she rose through the ranks and the difficulty she faced and where she ended up.
Yeah, and the profession, how it was then and how it is now,
exactly.
is amazing. I've listened to that podcast on your recommendation.
Yeah, I recommend it to everyone. It's such a good listen.
Yeah.
And then I'd say, to be honest, working in MSB, hadn't had much family experience or legal experience before coming to MSB. So learning from the experienced staff that are already here, that's what's inspiring daily, to be honest, and getting their guidance, which I think will be beneficial to my career. Yeah.
I absolutely hated the law degree. I just really absolutely but then when I did the LPC and you found how you applied that legislation in reality,
it's completely different.
I absolutely loved it, and it was like, wow,
definitely.
After 3 years it's all suddenly comes to life, and you understand it, so absolutely. And how about you, Jess?
I think a legal figure who's probably most inspired me would have to be Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
Right.
She was sort of a pioneer for equality law, and in her generation, she was the leader for making changes in equality law. And she's American. She sadly passed away last year. But it's figures like her and Lady Hale, like you were saying, Tom. When Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg passed away last year, I was actually thinking to myself, it was all in the news, all of the work that she'd done. And when I wanted to go to uni and do law, I never had to question whether that was something like, as a woman, I'd be able to do and succeed at. And I think that's a lot to do with the changes that have been made by icons like her and Lady Hale. So yeah, I'd have to pick those two.
We went to the LGBT Awards a few years ago, and I'd been nominated for the Corporate Gay Ally Award by one of our trainees at the time, but he's now a junior lawyer, Tom Stockton. And before the award ceremony, we had a drink ceremony, and me and Tom were talking to two guys from the British Army, and one of them was like really, really senior, and he was telling us about their journey and what they'd done to promote LGBT rights. And I thought, my God, these are the pioneers, because how hard was it for him 20 years ago to be brave enough to say this is wrong? Whereas, when I was bringing things in MSB, everyone embraced it and we all got behind it, and it was all fun, and it was all, but actually they had to really stand forward and be counted for what they believed in. So
knowing it could harm their career as well.
Exactly. Well, it was illegal at the time, so they were being really, really brave. Yeah, no, absolutely. So as a consequence of Tom and him telling me about podcasts, I've been listening to the legal podcast that's called The Hearing.
Yeah.
And the first question that they ask is, on a 1 to 10, how realistic is Suits? So I'm not going to ask how realistic is Suits, but as lawyers, do you watch any legal programs, and do any of them make you think, which do you think's the most realistic, and why? Or tell us about the character that you like.
Yeah, well, I mean, in terms of legal series, I try not to watch too many of them because TV's downtime, isn't it? Really? But obviously, I think like pretty much every single law student during the time that I went to uni, I did watch Suits.
I used to watch it before I went to uni. It was my motivation to get me to go to uni.
It's kind of
I was going to live that life.
You will have clothes like Jessica.
Yeah, well, exactly. Everyone wants to be Jessica Pearson, every lad wants to be Harvey Specter. Like that's kind of like what it is. And then you go to a law firm and you realise that this is not what it is.
Well, that's what I was going to come on to say. How realistic is it when you come to MSB? Does it?
Yeah, well, I think in terms, I suppose obviously it's a bit different because the law firm portrayed in Suits is, this huge international firm that represent, Michael Phelps and people like that. But, not to say that we haven't had high-profile clients, because obviously we have done. But I suppose it's in terms of like the litigation side of it, because obviously that's the predominant work that they do in that show. I'd say there's obviously a lot of elements that are not particularly accurate or representative of what it is in real life. I mean, but there are parts that you can suddenly come across a case that solves the
It
problem
may
for you.
motivate you, but it doesn't teach you.
No, it kind of. I suppose the one thing that it does show is that you've got to, there are some things that you've got to work very, very hard to do, and that's something that Suits does show is that they can sometimes be up late having to research various precedent to try and solve the issue because not every case that you get is easy to solve, so it does take that time. So I'd say that's probably the only thing that I can think of really that is representative.
Work hard is what it says. And you will be, Jessica or Harvey. Yeah. How about you, Tom?
Well, look, something I've started recently, it's not very realistic in terms of the content, is Better Call Saul. I mean, it's very extreme and a lot of the time he's doing criminal behaviour, which isn't very realistic.
Okay.
But I suppose in terms of, it shows...
Is he a criminal lawyer?
He's a criminal lawyer,
Right,
It shows a busy court system. And then he's constantly trying to make deals in the court building and stuff. And, from experience with the family court, I've seen that, take place. Advocates trying to, agree before it goes into the hearing. And something else I watched recently, it was this comedy series called Defending the Guilty.
Okay.
And it followed pupil barristers. It was a BBC comedy. And again, it was obviously exaggerated for comedy purposes, but it showed, there was a lot of scenes in chambers and they were doing a lot of prep for a hearing, so like bundle prep and stuff, which is obviously, takes up a lot of time. The stuff that goes behind the scenes.
You don't know how lucky you are, though, because now it's all done by the computer, where we used to do it manually. So never complain about doing a bundle.
And the bundle docs is the greatest invention ever, isn't it? Really?
Absolutely.
Bundle docs is brilliant.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
I was telling Jess, like when I was a junior lawyer, you put the bundle together, you'd go to the High Court in London, judge would be sat there and there'd be like a page missing and they'd say, who did this bundle? And you'd be like, oh God. You're always about the bundle than the outcome of the case.
Having to hand paginate all the
Now
documents.
it's just trying to navigate electronic bundles for remote hearings, isn't it?
Yeah, okay, that's great. So that's totally different. Yeah. And how about you, Jess?
Well, when I was actually thinking about this, when you listen to the hearing, they do ask, sometimes they'll say, what legal series do you like at the moment? And it's quite common for lawyers to say, I don't watch any of them because they're so unrealistic. And a lot of them are really unrealistic. But we were recommended by Mac in the Family Team, The Split on BBC.
I've heard of it, I've not watched it.
It's really, really good. And I'm quite interested in getting involved in family law. And it's the first thing I've saw that I've actually really got into that is not sort of about criminal work. It's all about family work, private family work. And I think that was really interesting. And it quite clearly showed sort of the different types of cases, doing the prenup or divorces and stuff like that. So I actually thought that was quite realistic. Not that I have much experience to go off, but it was.
I mean, as a family lawyer, I did a lot of legal aid work and public law work, but our private clients' family team say it's very realistic. And people who like Pauline McNamara, who deals with high and ultra net worth clients, say it the things that happened that she thinks, wow, that happened to me yesterday. So yeah, I'd forgotten about The Split.
Yeah, that's a really good one. And
Right.
a new season 3 is coming soon, so hang in, guys.
I'll have to start that, yeah.
Yeah, it's really good.
Absolutely. And so how and you say you don't really watch a lot of these dramatized legal programs, but how did MSB come up to your expectations of what a law firm would be?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it did, to be honest. In terms of when I first came into the team, came into MSB, we were in the old office in Silkhouse Court, where obviously the different departments were in sort of different rooms, so to speak. So for the first kind of 3 or 4 months I was there, I didn't really see anyone beyond my small team that I worked with. You kind of meet people in passing and you'd introduce yourself or whatever, but there wasn't really much of a conversation, chance of a conversation sort of during the workday. But then what I quite liked is that everybody was quite keen to sort of once every month, the sort of first Friday after payday, we'd all get together, we'd have some drinks, etc. And that was what I was expecting, was kind of right, okay, we're all working
The
for a company.
social life.
Well, exactly. I think you kind of like, you hear about sort of networking events when you're at uni and stuff, but you don't really know what it is or what it means. But it is just having a drink and having a conversation with people, and that can make such a big difference, because you get to know people, you get to know what they're like, and you may then sort of, when they progress and they qualify or whatever, you can then trust them to send a particular client their way or introduce them to a contact of yours. So I think in terms of, the social side of it, MSB's, is very, very good.
And you won't have experienced that yet, Jess.
No.
But
I used to be terrified of networking events.
It's all to come, don't you worry.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. And Tom?
Surpassed my expectations, to be honest. Well, to be fair, I hadn't had much legal experience before, so I'd not really worked in a law firm. And I mean, the pace and the intensity of the work was a bit of a shock to the system at first. But,
Right.
It's, the work that they were doing, the family team was just, inspiring. So, and the guidance and the knowledge they imparted was excellent. So, they made me feel comfortable immediately. And then, my skills just developed and I was getting more responsibility. And it's really put me in the position I'm in now, to be honest. I think I wouldn't have got the training contract without the guidance of MSB, and learning off the family team and the
I've
solicitors
always
I
said, and you never did any time in the family team.
I didn't,
Did you?
no.
But, Stephen got sent to do
Stephen
care.
got sent instead, yeah.
Yeah. But I have always said that everyone should do at least 3 months in family, the first 3 months, because it is literally hit the ground running. First day, go to court. So,
Pretty much it. It was
Yeah.
prep a bundle for this 5-day finding of facts hearing. Never prepped a bundle before in my life, but getting
You
stuck.
did it.
That's how you learn, don't you?
Yeah.
Just getting stuck straight into it, and so I owe all credit to MSB really. So yeah, it's been great.
I mean, it was one of the things that kind of like struck me when I initially interviewed for my first job with MSB, was the kind of, not necessarily assurance, but kind of like the encouragement that you were given that MSB really tried to grow their own. Do you know what I mean? And that had always been the case, that, if you kind of put the time in and put the work in as a paralegal, you will be rewarded with the training contract, because, with MSB, it's like they like to develop you from the ground up, essentially. Do you know what I mean? So
we are massively organically grown. I was a trainee at MSB when there were only 25 people there. So, and lots of people, like Tracy Quirk was a trainee at MSB. Gal's worked all his life at MSB. So, people have grown and come through. The family team has grown organically. Nikki, Emma, Pippa were all my trainees. So, very much so that you invest in people and that grows the firm forward. So great. And you haven't been with us long time. And have you been on any? When did you join, Tom?
2019.
Right.
So
Have you
I
had a
year-
Christmas party?
No, unfortunately.
Oh.
I think
Stuff of
there was a
legend.
Christmas party, but I couldn't make it, unfortunately, the first one. And then obviously last year was sadly cancelled. So I'm looking forward to this December.
Hopefully 2021.
Fingers crossed.
No
yeah.
pressure for me to put on a good party.
No, I've heard they're very good.
Yeah.
very
But
much so.
before I joined MSB, I actually had worked at another firm, and just polar opposite. Actually, I was 4 years into law, and I was like, surely this can't be it. Obviously, I won't say where it was, but but it was just
Name and shame.
but it was just completely different. Nobody really mixed. You were stuck in your team of say 6 or 7. And I didn't really enjoy what I was doing there. And I was thinking, I've put all this time in. I've told everyone I'm going to be a judge now. What am I going to do? I'm going to have to stay out, but I'm not really enjoying it. And then obviously when I joined MSB in January, it was just polar opposite, completely different. It was proper culture change joining MSB. And I think the culture at MSB is different to anywhere I've ever worked before. And I've had a lot of jobs.
It's something you get a lot of people saying, actually, that join MSB, I think. And what's quite impressive since I've, because even since I've been at MSB for, it'll be 5 years in September, and so during that time, the firm's at least doubled in size, if not a bit more. and it's still kind of retained that feeling. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of retained that sort of togetherness, so to speak, without being too corny. But you know, like it's kind of
We are
you
one.
know, but yeah. but you know, it's kind of it's still got that even now when we've grown to such an impressive size.
I'm laughing, but Michigan Duray's strapline is "We Are One," and it's quite a powerful, short little strapline. But if you can achieve that, then that is an amazing thing, because we all working together, cross-referring to each other, and it's really positive to hear the things that you say. I mean, for me, it's important that people are happy in work, because if they are happy, they are going to work hard. And they're going to stay, and they're going to grow, and we can only grow and go forward with you, and that's what's really, really important. So final question, okay? Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time?
It's been a long time since I've had a job interview question like that.
On the spot.
Yeah, well, I don't know really. I think in terms of 5 years' time,
As managing partner in your seat.
I'm sure you've got a bit longer than that, and you let you get.
Thank you.
I think in terms of what I want to achieve over the next 5 years, it's more just in terms of, you know, sort of growing my own client base, trying to sort of, you know, create a network in the Liverpool City region, create relationships, and just sort of build on the work I'm doing currently, really, and see where it takes me, I think.
Absolutely. So build your own brand and your own reputation that then complements the reputation of the...
Very
Fantastic. Well put, yeah. I look forward to the next 5 years.
Well, for me, it's still at MSB with a few years qualified under my belt. Just gaining experience and, you know, tackling new cases and, you know, on my own, and just putting the skills I've learnt to use and just seeing how my career develops, really.
And do you want to be, well, it might be too early to say, but do you know what area you would like to go into? Or
at this stage, it's family, definitely.
That is music to my ears.
And that could change when I get a new seat, maybe. I don't know, if I go to crime or property or something, that could just change it. But at this stage, no, I've just loved the experience I've had in the family department, and the skills I've learned and the responsibility I've been given has been excellent. So
that's
yeah, I'd like to see how that journey plays out. So
that's great. When I was head of family, and I always had the trainees, and I just think that, you know, really did good things, they were passionate, and I said, where do you want to see yourself? And they go, property. And I don't know, are you messing? Okay. So it's great to hear you say that. That's really good. And how about you?
More music to your ears. I would hope definitely in the next 5 years to hopefully be qualified as a family lawyer. I still don't know whether I'd like to do private or legal aid or get a feel for both. And definitely at MSV.
Great. Until you become a judge.
Until I become a judge. Well, you can hire me and see what I can do. But my fiance, Jed, I'd only worked here 4 weeks, and he was like, you're never going to leave. I was like, no. He was like, you love it. And I was like, I love it. I'm not leaving. Like, this is me set for life. Unless I get sacked.
Oh, God. I think the thought of that's more traumatising for me than it is for you.
Now that I've said that as well.
Oh, okay. Well, you know, thank you all, and hopefully this will be the first of a few that will have a few more looking and speaking to our future lawyers and next generation of really good lawyers at MSB. So thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you very
much.